welcome back to our live digital experience here. Another day, another session. We're glad that you've taken the time to join us here this afternoon. And so for the next hour or so, we're going to be learning about the latest release of the 50.7 component cabinet library. We've made quite a few improvements, some changes, added some impressive new products, and here to guide us through all of this, through the discussion and show you what we've done is Lenny. So thanks for being here, Lenny.
All right, thanks, Clay. And yeah, you're right. Overall, this is going to be an overview. We may get a little deep here and there, but we'll see how it goes.
Not afraid to get into the deep end.
Yeah, I'm never afraid. Clay's always like, no, don't go that deep. Yeah, but there'll be stuff for everybody. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so the kind of a review of what's happened over this last year with the library data. We'll talk about, I always like to mention some things to think about, right? Because libraries are not like the program where you can just run an executable and it updates, right? There's some things to consider about should you update and stuff like that. So I'm going to share my screen before I forget, because I've done that before where I'm like talking and showing all this stuff and everyone's like, what is he talking about? So yeah, we'll talk about things to consider, go through the release notes, right? And look at some new products. We can look at some new features that we've added, and a lot of it is, frankly, we've corrected a lot of things. As time goes on, tickets and stuff, or we get feedback, right? So like we find little things that can make it better, or we find that, if you put this product with this subassembly and these 12 changes, the part isn't quite right. So we're always trying to get, collect that feedback and make it better. And then if there's time at the end, I want to get into some tips on library performance. We'll either do it today. We'll also have a library session tomorrow at the same time, where we're going to go over the new library, which we will definitely talk about library performance and what are some things that we're doing these days to get maximum, performance. When I say performance, that means how fast the products draw, how fast they create work orders, and stuff like that. So there's actually a lot we can do. Well, a lot of it is just the toolbox, right? And they are actually making improvements on that side of things as well. They're always finding ways in code to, optimize the code to make things open and more snappy. But there's also a lot of things in the data actually that can have an impact as well. So I like to get into that. Okay, so why are we doing this thing on data? So a couple of things I thought about. You may be fine with your library. Maybe you have a super customized library and it's you may not be in a position to consider getting a new version, which is totally fine. I think that's kind of the best thing, is when you can make your own the library your own. But even so, I think it's always good to remain familiar with what are some new products that are coming out, what are some new data development techniques, some features, because you never know when you can come across something that's like, oh, I didn't know you could do that, or you can pull it and stick it into your data or somehow incorporate it if you can. I used to do that all the time. Before I came to Microvellum. That was actually kind of fun. I was always anxious when the new library would come out. I download it, install it. It doesn't override anything. It's just my own little environment. And then I would check things out and go, oh, that's how they did that. That I'd pull it out. I can drag, drop it into my library, and maybe you have to massage it a little bit, but you get it working in your library. And there you go. You got this new product or this new feature. Or another scenario, a lot of you guys, you don't do a lot of customizing. You just always get the latest. Maybe you reset up the globals, reset up your materials, and then you're back off and running, which is fine too. Some people, you may be unhappy with your current library. It's another reason why you want to look at this, and maybe you're thinking about updating. If you're in that category, definitely, watch this for the next hour or so. We'll be going through stuff. Maybe have time to take some questions too at the end. But you'll definitely be interested in the library of the future, which is what tomorrow's session is about, kind of this new structure that we're doing. So it's important not to get confused. You know, when we say new library, you kind of make sure you don't get confused, right? That what we're going to talk about today is it's the version 50 point. We're up to 7 now. That small number, we went 50.3. A lot of you guys have that. We went to, I think 50.4 wasn't out for very long, but 50.3, let's see, was released last summer. Well, no, 2019. Wow, it's been over a year. The 50.5 was released in, I have the release notes here. Let's see, current build, previous builds. Yeah, so here's the different versions of the release notes. And I think you can see my screen. Is that, can I get a nod, Clay? Are you seeing my screen? Okay, thanks. Usually there's like that red box, but maybe I'm thinking of Teams. Zoom doesn't do that. Okay, so here's the release notes for each of the versions. So yeah, it's been a year, 50.3. So why the small number? That means we aren't significantly making super structural changes. You know, when we went to version 47 to 48, you know, to 49, those are big changes that products don't meld very well together. But if you have 50.3, you know, products that are in 50.6, they should be relatively compatible. I mean, there may be a 1 or 2 globals here and there, but they should be pretty compatible. So it's been just a series of refinements that have what has changed. So yeah, so 0.5 came out, I think in February, and 0.6 came out in this summer, July, and now we're about to release 0.7, which is kind of it's been in beta, I think. Whoops. Beta libraries, current build, 0.7. Yeah, this is what we're about to release. Okay. Let's see. So we talked about, yeah, so let's talk about updating. First thing, you know, it's important to have a good understanding. Has your library been customized? You know, a lot of times we talk to customers and they don't know. Like they bought Microvellum, they went through the integration process. You know, maybe part of the training, maybe the technician that worked with them set up a bunch of stuff, made a host of changes. Hopefully that was logged somewhere or written down. And so this happens a lot where they'll get a new library and then they'll be like, hey, why is all this stuff changed? You know, and it's because they didn't know that your library may have been customized quite extensively for a lot of people. So it's important to just be aware of what you have. It may not have come that way out of the box, right? So if you want it to have those same customizations, you might have to go through the similar process in the new library. Okay. And I talked about, yeah, so another factor is if you just want some new products, which we're going to look at here next. Let me go to my, you know, you may see something here today and think, huh, that might be something I might want to put in my library. Maybe you have the 50.3 or something, and you know, you can download this and import, export, or use the database explorer to pull the products in and out. So over in, let's just get right into some of these products. So we've got these, it's like a half round. There's a half round and then a quarter round products. And actually, let me back up a sec. So keep in mind, you know, you may see something here and you think, well, that's not quite how I build it, or that's, yeah, it's cool, but I would never do it that way. You know, these are good places to start. So you can take it, at least you're not starting from scratch. A lot of the math, the trig that goes on to make these parametric products work, you can kind of recycle them or just take it, instead of starting from square zero. So that's another benefit of these. And also keep these products, full disclosure here, these were actually in a very old version of Microvellum. A lot of you may recall the whole version 6.7 days, right? Or version 6, even going back further. So these were working in an older library and they've kind of fallen by the wayside, if you will. And so we went, brought them in, kind of dressed them up a little bit, got them working again. And we wanted to get them in here for maybe, because it was just a shame to kind of have them sitting there on the shelf collecting dust when it's good to get it out there for people to maybe use, maybe to inspire some things of what you can do with Microvellum, help people understand what Microvellum's capabilities are. It's more than just square boxes. We have a whole variety of different things we can do. So that's kind of why I like to showcase these products. If I go to a conceptual view, one of the fun things about these was it's a flush inset beaded. And, we were able to get creative a little bit I wanted to graphically show the flush or the bead going around the corner here. So you can see it there. You can just kind of zoom in here and see it here. For those of you library data nerds, you can crack open the hood. We don't have time to get into it in this review session, but it's kind of interesting how we basically use a router bit on the part to do that, create that detail. And these are totally parametric in the sense of you can go into the prompts. Like this one here has 4 doors, and then you basically, you just specify a different width. Like I can make this guy a little smaller and the whole thing will shrink accordingly. So it's all parametric. So these would be our, I'll just show you, I'll just be more transparent here. Here's my notes. So we're going to go through the half round, quarter round. And then we have these transitions. So frameless, yeah, there's the inside curved guy, which is, I think, over here under corner. There's the inside curved one for framed. So we've had, these are called transition products. If I go to a top view, meaning you would use these like if the depth of your cabinets would transition to a shallower depth. So they can be angled left, angled right. We've had these for frameless version. And again, these were just got set aside. Poor face frame, they always get neglected. We always seem to do frameless first, and then we're like, oh, okay, we'll go to the face frame ones. Yeah. So as we have our development capacity is stretched sometimes to get these products out the door. But anyway, so here's the framed versions. Had some fun with the math, getting the math to all work out here. As you do inset door, overlay door, you can specify the depth, specify the angle. Door swings, you can specify the angle, which should be this option, or you can say what the depth is, which would give you any angle like that. So I think the way basically you would do this is you put a negative degree and then that would basically turn it the other way, right? So we've got your typical base, tall, upper, open, 2 door, 1 door. Okay, so that's good. What else did we do? Let me open up another, was it this one? I think it was this one. Somebody asked us, they just wanted the face frame only. So we're like, well, that's a good idea. So we created a category called just face frame only. And so it's basically, maybe you're doing a full length face frame. Maybe you've already got your boxes kitted up or whatever your carcasses, and you just want to do a face frame only. So that is, we've got a whole host of products that are just the frame. Then there's the upper starter horizontal. So we've had a base version of this. And so we finally got around to putting an upper version. And this is a full length face frame with let me just show you where it is here. If you go under starters. So we've had the base one. So this guy has one carcass behind the frame, but then the multi-carcass right here. So what that says is there's a box behind each framed opening. That's what that is. And so we've got that. And then, if you prompt it, right now there's nothing in the openings, but you would say how many openings you want. You'd calculate the size of the openings, right, left to right, because this is horizontal. Then for the bay one, you could say, I want to put a door on it or whatever. Let's just put an upper single door. And maybe in this middle one, I'll throw in some shelves. So if you're familiar with how the starter products work, that's kind of how those work. So there's some different varieties of these products. You've got the horizontals, the verticals, which would go, up and down. And then we've got this one here is also new. It's called a split height. This is also another resurrected product from the past, from the ashes of history here. We've brought it back to life. I've always thought this was a cool product. There's a version without the box and one with the box. So it can have 2, 3, or 4 bays, if you will. So right now that has 4. So depending on the number of bays, so let's say I go to 3, and you would say what the split height is. So like in this case, it's 20 inches. So that's going to be this distance here is 20. And then you would say, which of the openings do you want to split? So let's say I only want to split the first one. Let's see, no. So you're going to get something that looks like that. So, and then if you say, all right, I want to split the last one, then you're going to get something that looks like that. And so it's kind of interesting under the hood, like the formulas, because for example, the bottom rail of this frame, sometimes there's going to be 3 of them. Sometimes there's going to be 2 or 1, the quantities all change. And so it's there's a table that manages all that. For those of you spreadsheet nerds out there, the way this works is a lookup table that with a series of 1s and 0s, it says what's going on. And then you just basically answer the question. So on each condition, it does something different. And then all of the parts act accordingly, right? So you could have 1 bottom, 2 bottoms, 3 bottoms. It just depends on what the split openings are doing. So that's kind of a cool product. Let's see what else is new. Pullouts. So here we have, we've had the pullout subassemblies for a while, but I don't know. I think we just spaced it. We did not actually put, let's show you where it is. Is it in here? Yeah, we actually made a product out of the box. So you can just drag and drop. And the idea here is you would go to the width, notice, is a combo box, because depending on which selection you have, which garbage pullout you have, is going to change, the width and stuff. I haven't tested all of these. Well, I take that back. I've tested them all. Some of them, that one doesn't have blocks, but let's try another one. Let's see, interior components. Let's do this Rev-A-Shelf one. Thought we had blocks for all of them. Yeah, so there's a Rev-A-Shelf. So if we take a quick look how this is structured, so there's a lookup table. And so here's the options. And so you can add your own spice rack or garbage pullouts just by inserting into this table, filling out the questions, and creating the subassembly, which is this. And then you have, whoops, wrong one. That's gonna always catch me here. So here's the subassembly that has the garbage pullout in it. It's a piece of hardware, and the different blocks depending on how big it is, right? So there's a framed version and a frameless version. So I think if you go to the frameless category, we even have one that is a drawer with a pullout, which is this one. So you have a regular drawer on top with a pullout below. So I think those of you making kitchens, that would be very, very helpful if you haven't already made one yourself. Let's see. I probably should check the questions, or maybe you could holler at me. Where are those questions at?
Yep, they're coming through in the chat right now.
Okay, yeah, give me a holler if there's something you want me to, if it looks like it'd be good to take. Otherwise, I'm gonna just blast through this because I really want to get through to the end. There's some.
One of the latest questions was, I think, related to something you were just showing off. Is there machining for that garbage pullout?
Yes, let's take a look at that. If you look at the side, I'm going to click on the side here, and you can see the drilling is illuminated right there. So that is a perceptive question because for a while we were missing some machine tokens. So if we have a look here at the garbage pullout, I think we at first, I don't remember what version it was. Maybe it was 50.5 or 50.6. We added, or maybe it was 0.7 actually. We go to waste bins, no, not waste bins. It was in pullout hardware. Here we go. So these guys have tokens now. So that's what was missing. So let's say you have an older version of 50.3 and you want all this. You could use that import export to export these hardware items out. It should, if all works well, if the utility does its job, it should include the machine tokens, and you would import it into your library. And then you would have these hardware items with all of the machining. Like this one's actually has quite a bit of machining in it. Okay, good question. Let's see here. So we talked about that, pullouts, talked about the split height. But like I said earlier, the new products is kind of the eye candy, but honestly, and even some of these new features is the eye candy stuff, and people will go into that next. But the big thing is the corrections and improvements. There's a lot of stuff under the hood. I have no way I'm going to get into all of them. I have a couple to highlight. So let's take a look at the new features. I think a lot of you have already seen the costing tools, right? So I think I won't get into it at this point, but so that the reports are in there now. We've added a lot of data in the activity stations and in the material for estimate price, so that you get some kind of information here or some kind of data showing up. Here it is in these reports. So these are really cool. If you haven't learned about these yet, definitely ask somewhere on the forums or ask your account manager for more information, because these reports are very cool. So that's been added. Let's see, features. Projects. Set the coolant room. I think this was in here for a while. Honestly, I'm not sure if it was working how we expected it to work, but it should be working now. A scribe route. So when you have a product and you say, hey, on the finished end, I want there to be a finish end scribe, right? A lot of people do that. They'll say, like in this case, 1/2 inch will go jet out. And then we have global parameters that will even do a route. They'll do like a little route here so that the installer, I don't know, maybe not everybody does that, but some people like to do that to make it easier, makes less sawdust for the installer. And there's variables that control how deep that is and whether or not you even want it on or off, but you can kind of see there at the back of the cabinet. So that scribe route feature is doing better, or it's in there. For division, so we have a lot of these products, like if you go, you'll see like with divisions, which is this right here. So this is a subassembly. So for years and years, that's always been just equal openings. So this was another commonly requested thing is, well, I want to not be equal. It's not equal. And our answer has always been, well, just make a starter product, make with bay openings. But we did here is we edited so this is an interior component. I'm trying not to go too fast here. So you look at our interior components, right? This is a divisions with shelves. So we enhance, these are all subassemblies that can go in the opening, okay? So we enhanced that subassembly. I'm just gonna cancel out of here. I have a shortcut here, product prompts. There's also subassembly prompts. It just saves me a click. If you go under modify subassemblies, you'll see it right here as well. But I use this so much that I added it to my tool strip here. So I'm going to divert or bypass the product prompts and just go directly to the subassemblies prompts. If you're from 6-7 days or older Microvellum, this will blow your mind because this is something we've always dreamed about having and never had it in 6-7. We have it now. So I've drilled directly to the prompts. And so now I have a whole host of things I can do. This nothing to do with the cabinet. This is just that particular insert, that component. That's why we called it the component library. So what's new is, besides changing the quantity of divisions and the quantity of shelves, there's a custom calculator that we added. I think we've always had shelf openings, like for fixed shelves, but division opening. So you just say, well, I want the first opening to be 8 inches. And then you can say what the difference is, and it'll move that for you. So that's been asked for a while. So we did that. So the next thing is, since we're looking at this product, we added what's called a, where is it in my notes here? It's this wall hanger back here. You may have noticed, what is that thing back there? So this is especially popular over in Europe. They like to, when you move from your home, you take your cabinets with you, right? That's how they do it over there. So we added an option called wall hangers. So you turn that on and you get these wall hangers. And let's see here. It's actually a new subassembly called suspension bracket. And there's no parts. All it is some hardware that turns on based on what you select. I should have shown that, I guess, but there's a lookup table. So here's what it comes with. So if you want to add your own suspension bracket or however you want to call it, hardware hanging system, there's some Hayfla, some different brands in here. And you just specify the offsets, the rotation, is it left-handed, right-handed. Since there isn't a part, I do need to get to it this way. There isn't really a part to click on, it's just hardware. So yeah, here's where you change your brand, change what kind you want. Not all of them have a block, but they all have machining. So depending on what you pick, yeah, I picked one that it did a cutout on the thick back, added some little holes here for machining. So that's the suspension bracket. So that's new. Let's see. Leg levelers. So I've always had these leg levelers, which looks like under advanced options, it's a type of toe kick condition, right? Ladder style notched ends. So we've had these leg levelers, and so that's what's currently on at the moment. What's different is that, let me go to the prompts of that. By the way, when you do leg levelers, you get this weird cube. See that rectangular cube? And all that is, it's not a part. It's just to help with picking a point. Like if you're going to move a product, you need a pick point, you know. It's a point of reference. That's all it is. If it annoys you, you can go into the spreadsheet and delete that part. It's like a fake part. Anyway, so here's the leg levelers, right? We've always had this. You can move the leg levelers. You can pick which one you want, a Bloom, Hafele. You've got this Burnton. But what's new is, you know, we always, there's an endless options of what you can add. And so we wanted to do it. We had this different structure. Honestly, it's a different structure that we're using in the new library that this didn't have it. So I didn't want to just gut out the old, you know, and just replace it with the new, because people may be happy with this. So what I did is there's an option called Use Hardware Wizard. And so what you're saying here is, excuse me, instead of the old system, it's just a totally different system. So I'm just going to hit OK here. And instead of using those 4 or 5 that we had in the combo box, it's going to pull from a different list. So if we go over to our spec groups here, spec groups, hardware wizard, okay, so that's additional hardware. This library isn't utilizing this so much. It's a fairly new interface. The new structure that's coming out next year, this is going to be the thing. So here's your leg leveler base and leg levelers. So because, you know, so you would simply point to which leg leveler you want. So I think for the base, some have 2 pieces and some have 1. This particular one, this Hafele, I don't know how to pronounce that. I forget how to. Axelo. It has 2 components. There's a base piece and a leg. So let's see. Go to set that, none, and then the base is, you know, maybe there's this different brand, okay? So you're just going directly to your hardware material file. I'm just going to redraw this guy. I may have picked the wrong height. You kind of have to know what height you need. So there's this other type, right? Let's take a look at that. And then you should get some associative machining, right? That goes with it. It's kind of funny how it's transparent like that. Interesting. What X-ray does. Huh. And then I would also expect to, let me get out of this view. You'd probably have to, you know, move the distance from the edge, front, side, back, depending on which one you choose. Those are all variables. But the idea is it's a lot easier to add your own hardware, because to pick it, you just go directly to the material. So wall hangers, just looking through, or I'll just be transparent with you here. Show you my notes. Leg leveler. Talked about the wall hangers. The last new feature, actually, I didn't even prepare this before ahead of time. I'm so unprepared. Should I show this? I should.
Once again, Lenny, we have a question about machining on
Oh,
those
okay.
Hafley leg levelers.
Yes,
We including machining?
right here.
There it is.
I'm clicking the bottom, and so the machining is associated to the hardware item. That's a whole nother topic that I can't get into under the hood right now. But yeah, so wherever that piece of hardware moves, the holes are going to move with it. That's kind of the whole beauty of Microvellum. One of the cool things, same like this hinge, same thing, wherever that hinge goes, machining goes with it. I'm going to change my machining. Let's see if I should I'll do this upper cabinet here. Right now it's set to dowels. So I'm prompt the carcass. Go to my machining. Right now I'm set to dowels. I'm going to turn off my dowels. And there's let's see here. And hit OK. So right now this poor cabinet has no machining. It's chewing gum, I guess you'd have to. So there's this, I don't want to call it beta. There's kind of an alternative, would be a better word, alternative way to do machining. If you're really in a bind, we just keep seeing a lot of really weird ways to do machining. So we want to come up with a structure or a workflow where you can just anything, it'll accommodate anything. So if you go to back to your hardware, is it under hardware? Yes. Enable hardware edge array. It's a new token that you can put on a part, right? Because the bottom, let's say a cabinet bottom has holes. So when it touches the side, puts dowels. So this is called edge array token. So you specify a piece of hardware that goes along that part's edge. So wherever it touches, boom, you're going to get hardware. And so currently it's set to the Lamello Cabino, which maybe you're familiar with that. Again, you can change it by just clicking here, and I don't know that I have another example handy, but let's see. You could, a generic cam lock or whatever type of cam connector. That this is containing machining, right? So let's just look at the Cabino. I'm going to leave it as that because it has a really cool machining that's associated to it. I'm going to redraw. Now that that's activated, tomorrow if we forget, we'll show this in the new library. It's way smoother of how it's implemented, but this nevertheless, it does work. The 3D rep is a little funky, but if you take a look at the block, so here's what it looks like. And if we machine that part out, it is 3 drills. So you'll see it here. See that? So we have 3 drills and then a relief cut, little polyline. So wherever that piece of hardware goes, there it is. There it does the machining. 2 more things I'll show you. This will make more sense. If we take a look at let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at the token. So here's our bottom. Okay, so we have various tokens. There's dado tokens, camlock tokens, screw tokens, right? This is a new one. It's called edge array. And you specify the name of the hardware, the points along the edge, what is the offset, and it's all controlled by a lookup table. What is the rotation? If you notice, this is all looking to a lookup table called edge array, lookup table edge array. So it's like the whole marionette puppet is how these libraries work. To add the hardware, you don't touch the products. You just need to go to this table, update the table, boom, everything's updated. So I will show you what this table looks like, but that's the token. let's see, copy. Let's take a look in our articles. For those of you, this knowledge network, boy, if you're not using this, it is getting better every day. So here's a whole article that explains the technical stuff of how that works. I think there's even a little video too that teaches you how it works. So where is that living at? So in the hardware workbook, there is an edge array table. It's not very exciting right now. We just have one example, but you could add additional examples of other fixing brackets or fasteners. Answer the question, what is the distance from edge? What is the name, right? This would refer to the name in your inventory and your materials. And it's going to array it along that edge. And then if you go to that piece of hardware, I should have showed you this when I looked at it earlier. So if you go to I just spaced it. Where is it? Yeah, there's a search, huh? It's a Cabino. Sorry, there it is. So this Lamello Cabino has 3 tokens. So this one, I believe, goes diameter 15. That's the 3, yeah, the 3 big holes of the 15 mil holes. And then this bore goes to the side of the cabinet. And this is your polyline, which if you don't want that, that's for a cap. If you don't want the polyline, you just delete the polyline, but it's there in case you want to use it. That does that clean out, that relief cut. So once this little hardware guy is figured out, dialed in, then you just array that along your edges. So that's pretty cool. All right, so yeah, like I said, too many things, just millions of little corrections, and you can study those release notes if you really want the nitty gritty. If you're really curious, you know, I try to let you know, I mean, we don't do every single abbreviation change, every time we cross the T, dot the I. That would be unrealistic. But the ones that we feel like are important to bring to people's attention, we're going to list them out here. So quite a bit of effort goes into these libraries. It is a pretty massive thing. Frankly, this library does, I think, way more than people even realize. It's, gosh, going on 20 years, I think, of development. So it's a lot of, it's a very mature, a lot of things in here. And a lot of different people have had different techs over the years, have contributed different aspects to it. I think that's sometimes what creates some of the challenges. People write things a little bit differently. And so that's been one of the challenges to keep streamlined. But let's see here. So first thing, we did the wall, right? When you go to draw a wall, that is a product as well. And so I think we had some issues that were reported when you had 2 doors and 2 windows. So that's working better now. You can prompt your wall and you'll get this. And so all I did was specify I wanted 2 windows, 2 doors. You can reposition the doors and windows. You can even add a bulkhead or a column if you're not familiar with that. And then it does, yeah, it'll even automatically annotate if you want that, dimension and stuff. So that's cool. The next thing is, oh yes. So a lot of our products have these blocks, right? So this is basically an AutoCAD DWG that gets called out and brought in as needed. We had this story, we had one of our users was struggling with real slow performance. We were trying to figure out why, had the more and more products he was drawing, maybe you can relate to this drawing got really slow, like really bad. And so we isolated it to, it was this block. This actually, it's an inset bloom. It's called a bloom inset cam adapter plate, or I forget the exact name. And evidently the particular block that we had received, I think we got this from Bloom, but it was like a long time ago. It was way too detailed, meaning I think, in fact, there was also, you had to like explode it. There was like blocks within blocks, and it was like great. There was stuff going on in this block. So we just simply went to Bloom, got a new block, put it in here, and boom, the problem went away. It's like it made a huge difference. And so that's something that we're paying attention to. I think it's one of my bullet notes on library performance is watch out on some of these blocks. The other culprit was, I don't know if it was this one, it was that leg leveler from earlier. If you zoom in on it, there's just so much geometry going on. Yeah, it just seemed to really affect performance. So we've been going through and purging out what we can, what we see. We made a utility that went through all the blocks and kind of cleaned them out, make sure there was no unnecessary garbage in there. We did a purge command. We did an audit. Yeah, there's things inside of DWG that you don't need in there, right? Kind of put your blocks on a diet. Next point, yeah, we had some, for blind cabinets, blind corner, there's a lot of different options. You can have a hinge that mounts to this, you can have or it mounts 180 degrees to the back of the blind panel. The blind panel can be here, the blind panel can be, flush inset. There's just like all these different ways to do it. And apparently there were certain combinations that weren't coming out quite right. Customers reported that. So we got that sorted out. Should be working much better. So it's little things like that times 50. I don't have time to get into all of them. Whenever you have a situation like our libraries where there's, you think about how many variables there are in a typical cabinet. You've got dozens and dozens of variables, right? In combination with hundreds of global variables and different materials. You're gonna get combinations of things that we never expected it or never figured you would do. But it's getting through it. A lot of different variables. Let's see, polls. I think I had drawn one over here. Here it is, this guy. There are certain polls that there's really a left hand and a right hand, okay? And what was happening was they were just not being represented correctly. They weren't rotated correctly. A simple wire pull is pretty easy, whether it's like this or this, there's no left hand, right hand. And so we went through our dome pulls like here and made sure the 2D elevation was rotating correctly, made sure the cross section and plan section was represented correctly. So that was earlier this year. We put in quite a bit of effort on that to get those working better. So you should see, if you're having problems with that, that would be something that you could consider migrating. I don't know, it was you might need some help on that one, actually, more than thinking about it. It was quite a bit of work, actually. I'm recalling in my mind, we had to go into a lookup table and add a column, and I mean, it was pretty tricky, to be honest. But it's sorted now, unless you guys can let us know. I dare you to try to break it now. I shouldn't have said that. So the last new thing, I think you guys were talking about this earlier. I was not able to be on the meeting earlier during the SMA session. But this came up with SMTs where, so this is, right, solids. I just made some random shape, made a Microvellum product out of it, okay? So right now it's just, this is totally hard locked static data, right? Because that's just how it works. This is stomped data that just came from whatever you drew. So as you can see, there's other than width, height, depth, and some flat shot tokens, there's literally nothing in here when it comes to variables. So what was happening was people wanted to like embellish this with a door, a drawer, shelves. And so they wanted to use the Microvellum subassembly interior component. And what was happening was our subassemblies were expecting prompts to be there, variables in the L, in the main parent, and they just weren't there. So one day we thought, well, wait a minute, why don't we just there's an Excel function called if error. So in other words, if this variable errors out, then do something else. So we just wrapped all of the variables with that function to make it more bulletproof. So allow me to demonstrate. So I'm going to take this SMT product. We've gone through most of these, to be honest. There are a couple, like I think the 2-door we may have missed one, I'm just being honest. But it's pretty easy. I can show you what we did. It's not that hard to do. So I'm going to take this. I'm adding an adjustable and fixed shelf subassembly, and it's under the category subassembly inserts, right? So that means these are the ones that we're expecting you to insert into a product, not to be confused with the non-insert subassemblies. So these subassemblies are expected, they come in baked with the product, so don't insert those. But these you should be able to insert. Okay, so we've added that. We need to pick corners, which says I need to tell it where, bottom left, upper right is the how it works. And then Microvellum will populate this information in. You can also punch in a depth, I think. So hit OK. So we can add a shelf insert, which then of course uses the associative machining. So I alluded earlier to that spreadsheet function. I'll show you what I mean. Oh, what's a good example? Be a good example. Here we go. No, that's not a good one. You like our new buttons here, and we can now do a find and replace right here in edit work or edit design data. Here's one I was looking for. So thick back. So this was looking to, I think originally it just says local thick back. Well, like I said, there's no prompts. So that would have just thrown an error, and then that error would have then trickled across the whole thing, just would have blown up. So it's not that complicated. You just wrap it. Just say if error, then the variable. So if that is an error, then just return 0. So we just went through our prompts and did that. And next thing you know, the thing started to work. So gotta love our Excel variables. All right, so we are looking at pretty close to almost an hour. I didn't get to the tips on library performance. Are there any questions? I don't see any mega questions.
No, I think you were able to get most of them.
Here's
There
the
was one
chat.
from the beginning, but you just answered it. Rod's been holding on this whole time, waiting for you to get to this part.
Oh, sorry. Sorry,
So,
Rod.
yeah, no, it's definitely very powerful, and it kind of expands on the power of those custom tools that are available in the solid modeling tools.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good way to kind of incorporate both worlds. You may have, well, a whole collection of subassembly inserts
Mm-hmm.
you want to just add in. Um, so maybe I'll just do for a couple minutes on library performance. Is that all right, Clay?
I think so. Let's
Got
see.
a couple
There's
minutes?
one more question that came in here. So to be clear, can I download this library and play with it without interfering my current library setup?
Absolutely. The way when you install a library, you see up here where I'm moving my mouse, it says current configuration. That is a totally separate, it'll create a whole new configuration. So when you boot up Microvellum, you're going to get that very first pop-up screen that comes up. I'll just show you. I have a different. You'll open up, so you'll download the executable, install it. It won't overwrite anything. And then next time you open up Microvellum, you'll get this. Now I have like a million of them. This, what do you call this screen? The splash screen. So I have a million different ones. So it'll come in here as component cabinet library 50.7 or whatever. So you'd pick that, and then you're going to get, you'll get essentially this. So there'll be no projects. You go to open projects and it's going to have just nothing because it's a totally different database. And so you can experiment. It's like it's an instant sandbox. You can try things and poke and prod. If you see something you like, I would use this database explorer to pull it out. You can come into here, find the product. Okay, and then so on the left is your database, on the right is your hard drive space, your local disk space. So you just drag and drop to take it out and drag and drop to put it in. That's one way to do it. There's also database utility, which you can select products. Go in here, specify what product you want to export. It puts it in a database, and then you would flip back to your other library or your other configuration and do the reverse by importing. So that's how you can bring stuff in and out. But like I said, it may take a little bit of massaging. You may bring in a product from a different library and you go to draw it and it doesn't look quite right. And you'll have to go into the workbooks and investigate. Maybe there's a name error because it's expecting a global variable, right? It wasn't in your old library. And so then you'd have to fix that. And then you'd have to go find that global variable and put it into your older library. Same with maybe a material pointer. That's kind of how that works. So yeah, the last bullet point was some tips on library performance. We see more and more as people's libraries evolve, and the more they use it, maybe they're seeing some degradation in performance. And it's usually not one thing like, oh, that's why it was slow. I found it to be a collection of just many little things. And it's kind of the cumulative effect of all of these things is what's causing the slower performance. And so first one is number of projects. I've seen some clients, especially if you're on a server where you've got 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 engineers that are all creating projects, and kind of nobody wants to delete the other person's projects, right? And so what I've seen is like just hundreds of categories and projects. And it's like nobody thinks about, hey, maybe we should archive some of these, or maybe it's a job that you want to keep for a reference, or it's on hold. So what I would encourage you to just try to keep that as a minimum. Use that utility to export the project out. Maybe, and then if it comes where you need it again, you can import it back in, but just keep that at a minimum. the event log. So if we come up here, there's this thing called event log, which monitors whenever there's a message that pops up or an error warning or whatever. And Microvellum is working on some automatic, what's the word, where it kind of automatically cleans that out over, you can specify how long, but you might want to go in and check that out, maybe even go into your database and get those cleaned out. They can kind of start to build up and it just kind of bloats your database. So you want to make sure there isn't like hundreds of thousands of records in there, which, over a couple of years, even a year, you can accumulate quite a lot of records. And so so whenever it has to go to access that, it's just slow. But again, there is relief coming around the corner. I'm not sure exactly when, but they are going to have an automatic where you can set it up to clean that. Let's see. Another big one is materials, actually. So if we look at our workbooks, so just a quick refresher, the way materials work in Microvellum is they start, when you create a new material, it gets created in the database, and then it synchronizes to this workbook because it needs to be in the workbook environment because, we need to know how thick the material is, okay? And so we have lookup formulas that go like that start at row 1, and they look until they find what they're looking for, and then return, the thickness, let's say, which is the second column. So the more rows you have, it will actually have a noticeable effect. Now, when it comes to sheet stock, there isn't so much you can do. I mean, it kind of is what it is. There's been some discussion on formula materials that would help minimize the number of rows. But a big culprit actually is the hardware. So right now in this library, we have over 900, which it's getting up there. A lot of people I've seen 4,000 or 5,000 rows of hardware. And so this always kind of bugged me, like, because you need hardware. You can't just delete the hardware. You got to use it. But it occurred to me one day that it's like, the only reason this hardware is in the workbook is for the associated machining that goes with it, right? We need this. This is those machine tokens I was showing you. But a lot of this hardware doesn't need machining. It was just taking up space. So here's what we did. Like drawer slides was a big culprit. Our holes from our drawer slides actually comes from a different spot in the drawer part. So all these drawer slides, there's thousands of them really. Drawer systems, drawer slides. There was just tons of these, and they were, every time it's trying to reinitialize, it was doing this like sync, and that was starting to bog things down. So we created this thing called skip spreadsheet sync. You may have noticed this if you're on the newer builds. And that basically says, hey, don't bother copying that to the workbooks and keeping it in sync. So it skips it. So what you can do if you have an older library, or really any library, you can bulk select all of your drawer slides by shift clicking, because I know drawer slides don't have machine tokens. Edit multiple, skip spreadsheet sync, and set it to true, click apply, and it'll instantly update all of those. So that was step 1. But the problem is they're still in, they're still in the spreadsheet. So I'm like scratching my head going, oh my gosh, how am I gonna, I'm gonna sit there one by one and get those cleaned out. So we added this button here. Again, this was on, what's the build, Clay? You might have remember what build this came on. One of the more recent builds. We added this button called sync from database. And one of the things this does is it checks to see, hey, I'm finding, materials that are set to not sync. Do you want me to remove them? And you can say, yes, please remove them. And it'll automatically remove it. And that's really important because you do not want to manually remove these. I'll tell you why. If you do not want to come in here and say, oh, I'm just going to, delete, don't do that. You want Microvellum to do it. And the reason is when that gets shifted up, you have to also simultaneously shift up the machine tokens. And there's other things going on in here that these are referring to rows. These are your pointers. Let Microvellum do it. Don't, some things in data you can do manually, not this. And so that's what that button does. This also forces it to reinitialize. So like if you're doing a whole bunch of stuff and you're having some refresh, if you're suspecting a refresh issue, that's what this is for. You can click that. I can think of another example, like if you delete a bunch of materials and it might delete them out of this spec group, but maybe it didn't delete them out of the other spec groups. And so that's what this does. It goes through all the spec groups, make sure everything's all sorted. So this is a really nice little button here when you're trying to get things, when you're trying to do some house cleaning or whatnot for your materials. I'm just going to keep going, Clay, until you until you give me the hook. I have another couple minutes.
Couple minutes, yeah, I think that's okay. There was another question. I think you're kind of getting to it. Joe Rubio was asking about, we see slowdowns when processing work orders featuring starters. Any recommendations for speeding that up? Have you ever seen anything related to that?
Sure. Starters often have a lot of subassemblies, a lot of hardware. That's what this is, a starter. Some of the things that we've done in here, this is a good segue into my next point, is we were studying the workbooks here and kind of seeing where's some of this performance hit coming from. And one of the areas was, if you look at this virtual round, okay, so we have a lot of, it's called vectors and points. So these are functions that, if you will, are a little bit expensive. As far as, when I say expensive, I mean like in performance hit. So it's a cool function, it takes these vectors and these points and it builds this list here of points. But it took, the workbook has to crunch that. And what was a shame was, like a virtual round, well, 99% of the time, these formulas aren't even being needed. So again, we kind of wrapped it. So we said, we put an if statement right at the beginning and said, if, this Tokic notch isn't even on, well, then just return 0 and the formula will end right there. So it does not proceed to the next one. I said that wrong. Well, this is true. It would go here. It's false. So it goes to, yeah. I think I clicked the wrong one. This is the one I wanted to show you. Yeah. So this is returning false. So it just lands on the 0. That makes sense. So that way, the workbook is not taking the performance hit of figuring out all this. It's kind of a nerdy thing to talk about on this kind of a meeting, but that's the concept, is just being aware of what the workbooks are doing. I got chewed out one time from a developer because in my globals, it had a bunch of cells that were equals 0. It said like this. I think it happened from a find and replace. And they asked me, why are you doing that? Because every time there's an equals, we have to calc it. So you want to put things on a diet. If it's 0, just make it 0. That little thing starts to add up. The other thing that hit us was, if I go over to my door, we were working a couple years ago, we're working on this big lookup table that calcs all the door styles, okay? And if you're familiar with how a VLOOKUP works, is you input like the name of the door or whatever in this first column, and then you say, VLOOKUP column 5. And so it goes over to the 5th column and returns that value, okay? The way, and we did some extensive research into spreadsheet theory and how it calcs, and bottom line is when Excel is looking for a number, it's super fast. So that's why VLOOKUP, there's almost no performance hit. Even if you go out dozens and dozens or 100 columns, it's instant. If you use index match, or there's actually another function called VH lookup, where we're looking for something here and we're looking for text string, which we actually tried it. We actually said, hey, the formula would be better if we were looking for a text string. It instantly, we noticed a difference, like, whoa, it was so bad, we rolled it back. So you want to try to avoid, I'm not saying don't use VH lookup or index match, just be aware of that. Don't go dozens and dozens of columns unless you absolutely have to, because looking for the workbook to look for a text string, it's going to be a little bit slower. Now, like the last thing on this is, if we notice, if you on your keyboard, if you hold down Control and tap End, it sends you to the cell that's supposed to be the furthest cell that it's aware of with data in it. So right now it's not too bad, 347. If I go to my global and I type or Control End, that's not too bad. It's, go to my lookup tables, Control End. So that's interesting. So it's gone way out here in space, which is kind of unnecessary. So the bigger that is, and I've seen some that are like, row 10,200, it's crazy. Not quite sure what would do that. But some of these workbooks have been around for quite a while. Like I said, the library data is many years old. So what you can do is Control End. Okay, I don't like that. I'm going to click that row. I'm going to go up to my last. Oh, my bad. That is needed. Yeah. That's not a good. I've already cleaned this one. Basically, what you would do is you would delete those rows and it would move it up to where it needs to be. Just be careful you don't delete your data. I don't have another example, but anyway, that's another little tip, because when it goes to open and save or close, save and close and open, all that opening and closing, right, is what's happening every time you draw a product, redraw a product, or make a change, hit OK. It's gonna, again, it's not that one thing. It's just one of those little things. And that's one of the ones that we've noticed. That's probably a good point to wrap up. I mean, there are a bunch of really good knowledge-based articles as well. Some new ones like understanding offset polyline, adding a new poll. Let me load that one in. Some really good articles in here. Using the new edgeband token. These are some additional things that maybe we can get in tomorrow if we don't run out of time. We're always having an arm wrestling match over whether the article should go under library data or should it go under toolbox engineering. Kind of some of these articles kind of bridge both worlds, right? But this is a good article on how to add handles and pulls into the library. One question I've gotten is, what is the difference between all regions in North America? There are some articles in here that are very specific to the version 50 library, which what we use over here in the North America, Canada, US. So we'll put those articles in here, because they're very specific to that. But what you're going to find is going forward, the all regions, it's going to start being for all. We're making a new library that is encompassing, it's for all regions of the world, not just the North America. So you're going to start seeing this fill out even more. And so that's a teaser for tomorrow's session, where I'm gonna be joined with Jamie. Hey, Jamie, sorry, I forgot to mention you were on the call here, but Jamie is heading up our library development effort now with this new library. I've been working on it as well. My role is kind of changing to more professional services and stuff like that, but I kind of have a little bit of I am keeping an eye on the library data stuff. But Jamie is got some really exciting things to show us tomorrow. So him and I will be showing that tomorrow with kind of the library of the future. We've kind of from a ground up, we've taken all the last things we've learned the last 20 years. We know now some do's and don'ts. We know what's worked good, what doesn't work good. And we're building something that's going to be pretty cool. So that's for tomorrow. I don't know if you have any teasers, Jamie, but if you want anything else you want to comment on that, Jamie, to let people know what's coming. But
we'll leave that one for tomorrow.
We'll leave that one for tomorrow.
All right, well, I think that'll about wrap it up. Is there anything else you needed to in conclusion there, Lenny?
Yeah, I mean, keep using this knowledge network, keep using the community. I know we don't always get to every question. We try to as best we can, but keep using those community forums and let us know what's working, what's not working. There is keep your eye out for this new library when it gets, I think it's internally released, and we haven't put it out to everybody just yet. We're not quite at that point. We're getting close. But once you do see it put out, I think at some point we're going to talk about how that's going to get rolled out. But when you do see it and you want to check it out, please do check it out and let us know what you think. We'll probably have some sessions that are specifically on that. There's going to be some training, some things that are different. How you go about things are different. But it's going to be faster. It's going to be easier to work with. It's going to be easier to update, easier to maintain. Development efforts from all around the world can contribute to it instead of just being isolated to one area. I can go on and on. So anyway, I will end it with that. But thank you for having me on.
All right, appreciate that, Lenny. So there's obviously been a lot of work put into this library. We have been, the update for this library, the install for this library has been released for a while internally. We've been testing it out, pushing the buttons. We accepted Lenny's challenge, or a few of us have it, at least at trying to break it. So it's been through the paces for a bit. And so we are planning to release that here by the end of the day, if not by the end of the week here on our community site. So once it's available, you should be able to see it posted there. Download it, check it out, cherry pick from it, as Lenny was talking about earlier, learn from it, figure out what you can apply to your library, which may be custom. Or if you want to make the decision to switch to the new library. And if you need help making that decision, you can always reach out to one of our account managers. You can actually set an appointment here by going back to that IWF Connect page and reaching out to one of our account reps, and they can help you make that decision if you need that help. I noticed some of you had commented here today that you might be a little new to Microvellum. All right, so as Lenny mentioned, we are going to take a deep dive into our new library foundation tomorrow at this same time, well, actually at 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 Eastern, and you'll get a sneak peek at what we've been working on. A lot of work went into this as well, and then we'll get to see the direction our library team has taken this new foundation. So that's going to wrap it up for today. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. We're going to resume our schedule tomorrow at 7 a.m. And we invite you to join us again. Our schedule will be the same, but as you might have experienced today, the content will be a little bit different. Within each session, we're trying to keep things different so that and exciting so that you can learn something new each time. So hopefully today you learned something new, something that will continue to help you streamline the way you work, and we will see you back here tomorrow morning.